welcome to 2022's exam-based presentation for Natural Science and Health 1. My name is Petrina P. Haidula. My contact details are there. That's my email address as well. Please contact me between 13:30 and 1800 hours daily. What are we expecting in this presentation? We are expecting to be introduced to some concepts in Natural Science and Health 1, some teaching methodologies also, and also some methods of studying and preparation for the exams. The whole module, just to orientate you on the module, we have Unit 1 aspects of human reproduction. We will look at productive organs, we will look at structures, we will look at STIs within the module as you study or as you prepare for your exams. And then you also look at the structures and the functions of some main systems in the human body. That may exclude the human reproduction systems because they are already discussed in the previous unit. Then we look at aspects of human nutrition. We're looking at sources of nutrients, facts contributing to the nutritional requirements, and also how diet affects or our lifestyles are affected by our diet. We will also look at features of the compositions and uses of pollution of air, global warming and depletion of ozone layer, how to handle scientific apparatus and how to carry out those processes will be dealt with in the module. Features of the environment in terms of ecosystem, water, soil, and air, some features of plant and animals and living organisms, the classification of living organisms, different types of cells, plant and their biotic environment. So students, you are expected to work and prepare on that as you revise and as you prepare for the exams. What is the purpose of this presentation? Because we will not cover all those objectives and all those aspects in one presentation, but what is the purpose of today's presentation? The purpose is to orientate you, the student, to the module content. So we will pick up few things that we have seen that students struggle with. Then from the marked assessment tools like the assignments, the exams, we will get some drawbacks so that at least our students are orientated and find out what exactly is prevents them from getting marks. Then we also want to improve and strengthen our responses to the examination questions and assignment questions. We are, in this presentation, we are emphasizing the importance of studying the entire module, the entire study guide, before you even make use of these notes or you continue these notes. Do not just depend on these notes and prepare for them for the exam or for the assignments entirely on these ones, because they will never be complete in themselves. Another thing also that I want to guide my students on is that please consult other relevant resources, just verify the content. The purpose of the presentation is also to set a strong foundation for the examination preparations so that students at least will pass. Let's look at some few aspects of the human reproduction. You are expected to at least be able to identify and label these structures in the human reproductive system. You are also expected to know their functions. For example, let's start with the female reproductive system. My experiences with my previous students is that they do not differentiate between the endometrium lining and the uterus. The endometrium tissue is not made from the same structure like the uterus wall, okay? The uterus wall is an organ made up of mainly muscles, and that structure is not the one that is shed during the menstruation cycle. So students ought to know and to differentiate that. Another difference that the student ought to know is to also know the roles and the functions of the ovaries, the roles they play during the menstruation, the hormones produced by these structures. The uterine tube is the same as the fallopian tube or the oviduct. In the male reproductive system, Students usually need to know these structures, know their functions, where are they located, should we or should the examination prepare as such. Let's look at the menstruation cycle. The biggest challenge that the students have is what is happening during different stages in the female body, particularly in the uterus. What is also happening to the hormonal levels. Before we move further, we will be looking at 4 types of hormones. The FSH, which is now the follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone, the estrogen hormone, and the progesterone hormones. They are highlighted in different colors in this presentation. Okay? So, as we look at the days that are being highlighted here, it is expected for the students to know. Let's start with day 1. When does day 1 start? The day 1 is counted on the very first day the female sees the menstruation blood. Okay? And that day 1 marks the end of the previous cycle and also marks the beginning of the new cycle. Okay? So what is happening between day 1 and usually day 7 in the uterus? The uterus lining, not the uterus wall, but the uterus lining is breaking down and being shed or released. That's what is happening. Now, if you look at the levels of the hormones, okay, the levels of the hormones are all low. All the 4 hormones are down during that time, okay? And after the 7th day cycle, between 7 and 14, what is happening? The uterus lining is being repaired. If we look at our hormones, the estrogen hormone is very high or higher than all of them. And of course, the follicle stimulating hormone, the FSH in this abbreviation, it's also slightly above the rest of the hormones. So, we are saying what is happening in the uterus, the lining, not the uterus wall, but the lining is being repaired. Okay? Then day 14 is marked as the ovulation day. The release of an egg from the ovaries. So if the question comes, what is happening there? We are saying an ova is being released from the ovary. And if we look at the hormones, it's only the luteinizing hormone that is slightly high, follicle stimulating hormone that's slightly high, and also estrogen has been higher since before day 14. But the progesterone hormone is down. Then immediately after ovulation, we see the pink or the purple hormone, it's picking up. It's increasing. So what is happening there? If there is no implantation that takes place, then the hormone will go down. The corpus luteum will degenerate, that releases progesterone hormone. And that reduces the amount of progesterone hormone, and that means the uterus lining will break down. Now, you are expected to know the functions of each of the 4 hormones I've introduced to you in the previous slide, the glands that is responsible for releasing them, and their functions. Let us look at few functions in this presentation. Let's start with the estrogen hormone. It is produced by the ovary, okay? And what is the function? It causes the repair and the building of the uterus lining. That is why in the previous presentation, you have seen that the estrogen, the gray hormone, is high on that graph. So what else does it do? It makes the body to stops the release of follicle stimulating hormone and causes it to release the luteinizing hormone. Those are the main functions of the estrogen hormone when it comes to the menstruation cycle. The next hormone that we are interested in is the progesterone hormone. It's released by the ovary, or we can safely say by the corpus luteum. Who is the corpus luteum? Once the follicle releases an ova, it matures or it develops or into what is called a cubus luteum. And that structure, that body, releases the progesterone hormone. What are the functions? The main function is to maintain the uterine lining or the endometrium tissue. Another function is to thicken the uterus lining. That is why you see that that hormone is very high immediately after ovulation, so that at least the uterus lining is maintained and the zygote will at least have a chance to implement. The another hormone that we are looking at in this course is the follicle stimulating hormone produced by the pituitary gland. What function does it play in the menstruation cycle? It causes the maturing of the follicles in the ovary. Why are we saying it causes the maturing? Because as a female child or girl is born, or as a girl child is born, it's already born into this world with the follicles. They have just not been matured yet to release a fertile egg. So every menstruation cycle, then at least one of the follicle matures. It also stimulates the ovaries to release estrogen. That is why now when there is an increase in estrogen level, the follicle stimulating hormones reduces, because then it is being stopped by an increase in the estrogen. The next one is the luteinizing hormone produced by the pituitary gland. And its function is to trigger ovulation. That's why we have it high during the ovulation period. Now, another thing is to look at pregnancy. I have seen my students struggle when it comes to pregnancy. Here we are looking at the nutritional requirement during pregnancy and some structures involved in pregnancy. We all understand that pregnancy results or starts when implementation has successfully taken place. That means the fertilized egg develops into an embryo, and the embryo implants in the uterus lining, in the endometrium tissue. Then after that, we can then say that woman is pregnant. And of course, we are looking at about 9 months, that's the gestation period. Now, we are interested in how pregnancy affects the nutritional requirement or the nutritional needs of the female. Let's look at how does this requirement changes. First of all, we all need protein. It's needed for different reasons. This is not the time for you to discuss really the functions of proteins in general, but to relate it to pregnancy. For example, a pregnant woman needs more protein. The word more is the qualifying adjective that is now telling us that how much of the protein is needed. So you can't really tell a pregnant lady to say eat a balanced diet, but you have to tell increase your protein intake. The ones you were taking before you were pregnant is no longer sufficient to carry out a pregnancy or for a successful pregnancy. So they need more protein. Why should they need more protein? Because the fetus, not the baby, not the child, but their fetus needs to grow and needs to develop. That's why the pregnant lady needs more protein. Not only that, protein is needed for the formation of blood. We all know that hemoglobin is a protein, a carrier molecule for oxygen is a protein. And so it is needed for the formation of the blood for the fetus, the growing baby, the developing baby, the unborn baby actually. The correct word is the unborn baby. And the mother's blood. Not only that, the uterus wall needs to strengthen, needs to stretch. All these things requires more protein. The breast tissues need to also develop in preparation for the production of milk after childbirth. Then we have the next thing we'll look at is more calcium. Why should a pregnant lady needs more calcium? First of all, every human being needs calcium, and we know the functions of calcium in the human body. But why should a pregnant lady needs more calcium? She needs more calcium because the fetal bones, the bones of the unborn baby, needs to be hardened That's why we say for the classification of those bones. And the cartilage also needs more calcium to be calcified. Not only that, calcium is also needed for the contraction of muscles. And the uterus wall is a muscle made up of muscles. So during labor, she will need calcium so that these muscles will contract. So the pregnant lady needs more iron as well. We already talked about blood, but remember, red blood cell cannot be formed without iron. So it is also needed for that. Then more omega-3, more omega-6 for the development of the fetal brain and the nervous system. So whenever you are discussing the nutritional requirement of a pregnant lady, remember to add more, because you are comparing her to a lady that is not pregnant. Then we look at what are the structures and their functions that are involved in pregnancy. Definitely, we look at the placenta. Placenta is formed during pregnancy and, of course, discharged at the end of the pregnancy. This is an organ for the exchange of soluble substances. Now, dear students, please do not say it is needed for the exchange of nutrients. Nutrients are not exchanged. If you say like that, it means you are saying the fetus gives nutrients to the mother and the mother gives nutrients to the fetus. Also, do not say exchange of oxygen. You are saying the fetus give oxygen to the mother and the mother gives oxygen to the fetus. But you can safely say it allows the exchange of gases, because here we are looking at them as gases, not specifying their name. Another thing is also that then carbon dioxide, of course, moves from the fetus to the mother. That's the net movement. Other wastes are also released. Another main function of the placenta is to release progesterone and estrogen hormones that are needed for successful maintenance of a pregnancy. The amniotic fluid, which protects the fetus against mechanical shocks, preventing drying out, and also the fluctuation of temperature. Then we have the amniotic sac, the membrane that encloses the fluid, okay? And we have the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord contains the arteries. In this case, the arteries are carrying deoxygenated blood, the blood that contains waste from the fetus to the placenta. And the umbilical vein, then it moves from the placenta to the fetus and it transports oxygen and soluble nutrients, plus any other substance that might move from the mother's blood to the fetus. Another aspect of human reproduction is heredity. We have two genetic diagrams, the Punnett square and genetic crosses. Students, be warned, the time when you are drawing these diagrams, please take note that the gametes are always encircled. Once you have not encircled those gametes, then they are not gametes. Make sure that your gametes are always encircled. And also take care that no gamete fertilizes itself. Also take care that no gamete is fertilized by the same gamete more than once. That's the only care you should take about. And please copy the letters representing the genes correctly. We move on to the next system, the digestive system. Digestion has to do with starting with a large molecule or a large piece of food, making it into a smaller pieces of food, large molecule, insoluble to soluble ones. Then we have mechanical digestion and chemical digestions. Of course, mechanical we are looking at a physical breaking up of food pieces. And chemical digestion, we are looking at breaking the bonds that are making up these nutritional molecules. Why should we chew our food? Because we don't want to swallow large pieces of food that will choke us. So it makes swallowing easier. Not only that, as we are breaking it into smaller pieces, we are increasing the surface area so that enzymes have more space or more surface to work on. And we are mixing the food with the saliva. Why with the saliva? Because the saliva contains amylase enzyme that start the digestion of starch in the mouth. You are supposed to work on the components of the digestive system, what takes place there. We already started with the mouth. In the stomach, food is stored there, and then we have protein that starts to be digested inside there. We also have hydrochloric acid that kills germs that are swallowed in with the food. Then we have the pancreas, releases the digestive juice. It contains the pancreatic juice, where we have enzymes there, such as amylase, such as the trypsins, such as the lipase enzymes. Then we have the small intestine, divided in the ileum, the jejunum, and in the small intestine, we have the completion of all the digestion of the large food molecules, the lipids, the proteins, and the carbohydrates. Then also, we have also the absorption of these nutrients. Then we have the large intestine, we have the colon, we have also the rectum that stores the undigested food. Remember, undigested food is not part of excretion. I always see students being confused there because it was never part of your body, simply a discharge of undigested food, which it has only changed in physical nature, but the chemical nature hasn't changed. Let's move on to the circulatory system. This system is dealing with the flow of blood in the human body. First of all, we have a double circulatory system. We have the pulmonary circuit and the systematic circuit. In the pulmonary circuit, we look at the blood flowing from the heart to the lungs to pick up oxygen and to drop the carbon dioxide. Then it returns with rich in oxygen, returning to the heart, and it's pumped again back to the systems, to the cells, all body parts of the human body, and then it returns after it has lost its oxygen, returns with more carbon dioxide. You are expected to know the functions of these components of the respiratory system: the heart, the artery, the vein, the capillary, and the components of the blood. Already we know the heart pumps blood, okay? What is the artery? It transports blood away from the heart. Not always are they transporting oxygenated blood. Then we have the veins transporting blood to the heart. Blood capillaries allowing the exchange of substances between the blood and the tissue fluid. Then we have the red blood cells. These red blood cells contain the hemoglobin. Hemoglobin binds with oxygen, and that allows the transportation of oxygen from the lungs to the tissues that will need it. The white blood cells in common fight infections, but definitely you can't really give this function for, say, lymphocytes or neutrophils. That is a specific name, so you have to give that specific function. Then the platelets are needed for the formation of blood clots. Blood plasma is the fluid that contains all the blood cells. The nutrients are dissolved in it, and also the blood proteins or the plasma proteins such as fibrinogens are found there. In this case, look at also the diseases that are affecting the respiratory system. In this case, we picked the coronary heart disease. It is linked to high intake of cholesterol. So when one takes in a lot of cholesterol, it blocks the coronary arteries, and blood may not flow beyond this blockage, and the tissues beyond the blockage begin from dying out. Also, when one doesn't do a lot of exercises, genes may also affect this type of disease. But when we link it to nutrition and diet, we are specifically looking at the high intake of cholesterol. We are moving on, students, to respiratory system. This has to do with the movement of gases within the human body. We specifically look at this structure, looking at how air moves in, mostly through the nose, and then we are looking at the lungs, the trachea, kept open by the cartilage rings that are in the C shape. Then we have the gaseous exchange surfaces, which are our alveoli. Okay? What are the features of the gaseous exchange system? It's thin. Why is that a very important feature? When it's thin, there's a short distance between where the gases are diffusing from to where they are diffusing to, and that speeds up the process. They also have a large surface area. That's why the alveoli is curved. That increases the surface area compared to the volume inside the alveoli. So, if you have a large surface area, that means you have more gases diffusing into and out of the alveoli. It is also well ventilated. As you continuously breathe in and out, you are drawing in air rich in oxygen and you are expelling air rich in carbon dioxide. That means you are keeping the diffusion faster because you are maintaining the diffusion gradient. Not only that, you have a good transport system. If you look at the alveoli, is surrounded by blood capillaries, which are transporting the blood that is rich in oxygen away from the lungs and bringing blood that is rich in carbon dioxide to the lungs. That maintains the diffusion gradient and you have faster diffusion. It is also lined with the surfactant, which prevents drying out and also dissolving the respiratory gases for faster diffusion. Now, how does pollution affect the gaseous exchange system? Carbon monoxide, usually found released from incomplete combustion, so binds permanently with hemoglobin, and that replaces the place or replaces oxygen, and we would say now this person will have reduced amount of oxygen in the blood, or you will have fewer hemoglobins that are available to transport oxygen. Then we have tar that irritates the respiratory lining and destroys the cilia and the alveolus. Sulfur dioxide worsens asthma attack. Then, of course, allergic reactions from pollen, for example. Let's look at the excretory system. That is the system responsible for the removal of waste, toxic, and substances that are more than what the body requires. You are expected to look at the major excretory system, organs, and their main substances that they excrete. They are not in any particular order, but let's start with the lungs. Okay? The main substances that are excreted from the lungs are carbon dioxide, which is a waste product of respiration, and excess water vapor. So when you say water vapor is being expelled from the lungs without the word excess, the qualifying term excess, then you are not talking about excretion because it doesn't fit. Water vapor is not toxic, it's not waste, it's only when it's in excess. Let's look at the organ skin, the largest organ we have in our bodies. The main substance that is being excreted is sweat. In that sweat we have urea, excess salt, and excess water. Remember, salt is not toxic, it's not a waste, so it's only removed from the body when you have an extra, when you have more than what the body needs. Then the renal system, through the urine, excrete urea, excess salt, and excess water. The next system we are looking at is the nervous system for coordination. Okay? In this system, we are interested in at least the basic functions of a reflex arc. Okay? Draw the difference between a reflex arc and a reflex action. The action is the response, a quick response to to a stimulus. You are not thinking of that, but definitely you'll be wrong to say the brain is not involved because it depends on which reflex action are you talking about. Because when I'm blinking my eyes because something is flying toward my eyes, definitely those nerves are connected to my brain. So we are talking about the receptors receiving the sensation, taking it to the spinal, converting the stimulus into a nerve impulse and then transmitting it to the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron transferred to the spinal cord or the central nervous system, depending on where the reflex is taking place, and then is relayed to the effector neuron, to the motor neuron, which transmits it to the effectors, which can be muscles or the gland. Students, I am of the opinion that you'll be able to study the study guide fully, following the objectives that are listed at the beginning of every unit. However, my experiences with my former students are that they probably need some tips on how to answer assessment questions, questions in the assignment, questions in the exam. With the online assignments and the online exams, students are tempted to copy the answers on website. It is easier to find out that you have copied because it's available to everyone. But let me give you these tips. Before you attempt any question, make sure you understand the question. Before you even just copy that question and paste it on Google search section, please understand the question. Because if you don't understand the question, then you do not know what to expect. Anything that comes up, you will copy and paste. Your students who copied their questions with the numbers. I'll show you if I'm fortunate to have that content in here. Students, let me give you tips on how to answer questions in an assignment, questions in an exam. With the online assignments, students are copying answers from the website. They just copy the whole paragraph as it is, and you know it's copied because the wording in that paragraph does not fit the answer. And also, before you just copy that question and put it on the Google search engine or wherever you are putting it, understand the question first. What does the question ask? And also ensure that you know the content. Because if you don't know the content, you don't know what the question expects, whatever comes is good for you. And then you have a student complaining, no, but the content is the same. It was an online assignment. It was an online exam. How come I failed, teacher? Yes, you failed because you did not know the content. You do not understand the question. Establish the scope of the question. What is the question asking me? Is the question asking me to list? Is the question asking me to apply? Is the question asking me maybe to just mention a few or explain? Does it ask me to have an affirmation to say yes or no and support my thinking or my reasoning? Another one, determine the level of thinking required. Students, we give you content. You learn the content. You should understand the content. But in an exam, we will ask you questions to apply what you've learned. Does the question ask you, or does the question require you to reflect on what you've learned, to critique what you've learned, to synthesize, to come up with something using the information you have learned in the class, the information you have acquired in the syllabus or in the study guide? Then when you know that, answer the question. Let's take some examples from the past questions, past exams and past assignments. Question number 1. Describe and explain the difference between the balanced diet of a 5-year-old male and a 30-year-old male. If you go back to your study guide, where it says nutritional requirement, there is a place where it says you should at least, there's a place where it says the nutritional requirement is determined by gender. Males need more energy than females. But here we are looking at the males, okay? They are of the same gender. They are of the same sex, if we can say that. We also, if you go back to the syllabus, to the study guide, it says also your age. Look at here. One is 5 years old, one is 30 years old. It also look at the level of your activities. Definitely a 5-year-old, though active as he is, he cannot be doing the same physical activity like a 30-year-old male. Example number 1, describe and explain the difference between the balanced diet of a 5-year-old male and a 30-year-old male. I have 3 samples of answers from the previous students. Student 1 made a table, I like that, and is comparing. The student is saying 5-year-old male will need less protein, while the 30-year-old male will need more protein compared to the workload they are doing. Protein is not directly linked to the workload one is doing. Then another one says the boy will need more iron compared to the man. He will need less iron compared to the man. Remember, it's describe and explain. He will need more calcium for strong bone and teeth. That's the 5-year-old. While the 30 years will need less because his bones are already classified. At least there was a mark there. Let's go to the example number 2. Example number 2, the student responded, growing children and teenagers need more energy as they are growing. I think there's an English typo there. They are growing and busy. Young bodies also absorb nutrients from the food they eat more quickly than do older bodies. That is a copied statement. Just look at it. It doesn't explain the difference between that. A balanced diet consists of protein, mineral, vitamin. This one is describing a balanced diet. It's not describing a balanced diet of the 2 people, how it is different. It's giving us what a balanced diet is, which is not the scope of the question. A balanced diet of the 30-year-old male will be totally low in fat, high in fiber, but the balanced diet of 5-year-old male will have more fat and low fiber. That's a description, but it didn't tell us why. While adults can consume more fat but burn less. So now you are saying both of them will need more. Will need low in fat and high in fiber, but the balanced diet of 5-year-old have. You see, the student didn't really answer the question. Now, what was expected in this question? The description number 1. You can't describe it in this order, but at least what is expected. You have to refer to that the 5-year-old need more protein than the 30-year-old male. That's 1 mark. And then you are giving an explanation because the 5-year-old is still increasing in size while the 30-year-old male has reached the full adult height or size. Look at, there is a plus there, so all the 2 reasons must be given. Description number 2 that students could have given is that the 30-year-old male will need more carbohydrates than the 5-year-old male. What is the reason? The 30-year-old male needs more energy to contract the larger muscles because the 30-year-old male has larger muscles compared to the 5-year-old male. They are all males, remember. We say males need more carbohydrates than the females. Or let's say men need more carbohydrates than the women. Then description number 3 that students could have given is to say 5-year-old male needs more calcium or vitamin D than the 30-year-old male. Why? The 5-year-old male's bones are still growing and still being calcified, while that of the 30-year-old have reached its full adult length, so will not need more compared to the 5-year. Example number 2. Describe how malnutrition can cause coronary heart disease. Students, in this regard, I don't think I have an example for you. Students screened answers, but most of the students will tell you a lot of they will talk about exercises, they will talk about genetics, while the scope of the question is talking about malnutrition. Malnutrition could be either because you are taking in a lot of a certain nutrient or taking little of a certain nutrient. In this case, what was the scope of the answer according to our objectives in this course is that you expected at least to refer to more intake of salt, which increases blood pressure, and you have the blood vessels damaged. Okay? And also you will have also blood clots formed in coronary arteries. Then you could have also referred to the cholesterol intake, more cholesterol intake that blocks the coronary arteries, leading to heart disease. Then you can also refer to more fat intake, carbohydrate intake, protein intake. Those things must be more than what the person is needed. This may lead to obesity. And when the person is obese, the heart is under strain because it's pumping a large volume of blood to a large volume of bodies. So we can say the heart is overworked. Example number 3, explain how deforestation will change the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Past students provided a range of interesting responses. I picked 3 examples. Example number 1, when forests are cut down, look at the word that. It was a copied answer from internet. Stored carbon is released, not carbon. We are referring to carbon dioxide concentration. The student is talking about carbon released into the atmosphere. Okay, again, it's carbon dioxide, but this symbol is not for carbon dioxide, but maybe for cobalt oxide or cobalt-2, which doesn't exist because cobalt is not reactive. So mind how you write your chemical formulas, because you will give us different chemical names which are not at least making sense. Green plants take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and releases oxygen during photosynthesis. This mark was wrongly placed here. It was supposed to be placed at the first response, okay? Because the question is how deforestation changes the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Response number 2, deforestation leads to the increase of carbon dioxide in the air, in the atmosphere, which results in the increase of temperature in the atmosphere known as global warming. So this student has at least described the influence of deforestation on carbon dioxide concentration, okay, and did not explain this effect. Why should carbon dioxide increase, but rather went on to tell us what carbon dioxide high levels will do to the globe, such as global warming. It is not what a student should have said. Deforestation, the next response. Deforestation affects carbon cycle because trees are a big part of carbon cycle as they use carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and then produce oxygen. Remember, the question is not whether the trees use carbon dioxide or not. If more trees die and there is an increase in the usage of fossil fuel, look at how the person is going. He's talking about fossil fuel instead of talking about their concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now, what was the expected response? We expect the first response should have been to say carbon dioxide concentration will increase in the atmosphere. Why? Because the decaying plant matters are emitting carbon dioxide. Not only that, forests or trees or plants that were removed, remember, is deforest. There was a forest and it was removed. Forests are carbon dioxide sinks. That means they absorb carbon dioxide, and now you have removed that sink, so there is nothing to remove the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. That was supposed to be the student's response. Example number 4 that I have provided for you is describe the effect of deforestation on weather pattern. Describe the effect of deforestation on weather pattern. Student responded, it increases water vapor in the air and causes the land to reflect more light as there is no tree to absorb it. Okay? Trees are not absorbing water vapor. Trees are taking in carbon dioxide. The second response, it causes increase in temperature and changes the amount and distribution of rainfall. how is this distribution changing? So I expect at least to say less rainfall. You are describing what will happen. Less rainfall. Why? Less water vapor released by transpiration because there are less trees. Or say more rainfall. Then you link that one to global warming because there will be more carbon dioxide leading to global warming. Then I expect you to talk about also global warming. You are describing. These points are simply guiding the marker of what to look for. Example number 5. Describe how authorities can reduce the destruction of ozone layer. The first response, they can control the burning of fossil fuel. Is ozone layer destroyed by burning of fossil fuels? Waste products in the air by finding the culprits and control the cutting of tree by producing license to the people. This person is talking about, I think, global warming and not the ozone. Another one, agreeing to stopping the use of ozone depleting substance. That's correct. Avoid the consumption of game dangerous to the ozone layer. Of games dangerous to the ozone layer due to their content and manufacturing processes. Buy local products. Which local products are you talking about? Buying a tomato is also a local product if it was produced in my location. Another response, reduce cutting down of trees, minimize the use of cars. I expected the student to say stop the production and the use of CFCs, ban the import of product emitting CFCs, or use less air conditioning, especially the air conditioners that contain CFCs or gases that destroy ozone layer. The last example is this one, example 6. Figure 1.1 shows the structure of a typical fish. That's the structure. Then the question was, with the help of figure 1.1, describe how fish have adapted to the environment. Though you might know the name of the fish, the question is referring to how fish in general have adapted to live in water. Some students were talking about how the tilapia is adapted to the Namibian environment, but there is nothing about Namibian environment here. And remember, you are looking at the things seen in figure 1.1 because it says with the help of figure 1.1. What have you seen there? You have seen fins, tails, and maybe you can also talk about, there is no lateral line there. You can talk about the streamlined body. There are no scales, so you can't talk about the scales. You can't see the gills, but there is a gill cover or something like that. So that is what you can talk about and how it helps in the environment. Now the last one that I have to leave for my students is just a word of caution before I let you to study the course. Study your course outline and the study guide. Study each learning objective. Do not select. All learning objectives might not have been discussed in this presentation, but they are necessary for your preparation of the exam and also for you to understand the content so that you become at least a comfortable teacher in the future. Ensure you understand what you are studying. Invest in a dictionary. Plan your study time to avoid leaving gaps. Students leave open gaps even in assignments where you have more time to complete. Practice during your study. Try to at least answer past questions. Do some consultations. Consult your tutor, consult your fellow students, consult different resources. Whenever you are given a question paper, do the survey. Start with the questions that you are most comfortable with. The questions you think or you know, even if time could not be enough, I'm very confident that I will pass these questions. And then end with the ones that you are less confident, where even if you are not done, you are not going to regret and say, I wish I had more time because I've lost more marks. You already know that you are likely not to get a mark there. Know what the question requires. What is required by the question and provide the requirement. Do not just write anything that is not required by the question. With a word of caution, I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for your time.